Good afternoon and welcome to our Business Success Series presented by Manulife. Today's webinar is Building a Better Workforce Through Connecting Students and Business. My name is Allison Mitchell and I'm the Program Manager of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Access Student Talent Program. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people, as we seek a renewed relationship based on the foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us in fostering a positive environment here today that is safe and welcoming space for all. We know there is more that we can do, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors. A special thank you to our title sponsor of the Business Success Series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership, and November sponsor, Waterloo EDC. These organizations are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Before this session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure that your microphone is muted to reduce any background noise. If you have a tech-related question, please feel free to add it to the chat and one of my colleagues will get back to you momentarily. If you have a question for today's panelists, please put it in the Q&A section and we will have a Q&A after the panel is done. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation and it will also be made available on the Chamber's website. I would now like to invite Tony Lamantia, President and CEO of Waterloo EDC, to introduce today's guests.
Many thanks, Allison. Waterloo EDC is proud to sponsor this month's Business Success Series. I have the privilege of introducing today's guests, Samantha Nemec and Margie Mclean. Samantha Nemec is the Communications and Fund Development Coordinator at KW Habilitation. She holds both a diploma and degree in public relations from Conestoga College. Sam values community connections, whether it be supporting small businesses at local markets or networking professionally. She loves to meet people, and in particular, she loves to meet the people who make this region truly awesome. In her spare time, you can find Sam gardening, playing classic Nintendo games, or cooking with her family. Marty Mclean is the Communications Coordinator at KW Habilitation and the Children and Youth Planning Table. With a degree in art and history from the University of Toronto, she works to find creative solutions to everyday communications problems. Outside working hours, you'll find Margie enjoying spending time in the garden, connecting with family and friends, and volunteering with organizations like the Special Olympics. Please join me in warmly welcoming Samantha and Margie. Thank you to all of you for joining us today, and I will now pass the baton back to Allison.
Thanks so much, Tony. We really appreciate the support of Waterloo EDC. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today with Sam and Margie. When students and businesses work together, there are many benefits to both students and businesses. And we know that talent attraction and retention is a challenge for many businesses, and students can be a really great source of talent in that regard. In 2018, the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce launched our Access Student Talent Program in collaboration with University of Waterloo, Wilfrid Laurier University, and Conestoga College. And this program is meant to help small businesses and not-for-profit organizations more easily connect with post-secondary students for a variety of work-integrated learning opportunities. Students can be a great source of creative and innovative ideas, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of that today. And they can also provide organizations with a great opportunity to get some temporary resources. There are a number of ways that businesses can work with students. So many of us are familiar with co-op work terms. There are also things like field placements and capstone projects and in-class projects. And those are only some of the different ways that businesses can work with students. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different ways today. And we do certainly have more information about the different opportunities on our website. For businesses who are interested in learning more about working with students, they are welcome to reach out to myself and my team at the Chamber. We would set up a one-on-one call to talk about your business needs. We would then take that information and we would do some research to figure out what options you might have for working with post-secondary students. From those options, if there's an option that you're interested in exploring further, then we connect you with the right people at the post-secondary school so that you can continue the relationship and hopefully find the students that will support your business. As I mentioned in the beginning, businesses and students, when they work together, there's many benefits all around. And our program is here to help small businesses and not-for-profit organizations connect with those opportunities to support their organizations. Our program is a free service and it's available to both chamber members and non-chamber members. And so please feel free to reach out. Now it's time to hear from our panelists, and you have heard their bios from Tony. I wanted to add a little bit of background. So Samantha's going to get more into her experiences, and Margie's going to get more into her experiences. But a brief overview is that Samantha is a relatively new grad, I would say, Samantha. And she worked with several organizations while she was in school, including doing a co-op term at KW Habilitation. She now has a full-time role with that organization, which is really exciting. Margie hired and supervised Samantha during her co-op role with KW Habilitation, and she's going to talk about her experience working with students. And so we're really in this session today going to get the perspective of the student and the perspective of the organization when both students and organizations get together. So maybe we can start, Margie. Can you tell us a little bit about KW Habilitation?
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this today. And I think I just would situate myself first. My name is Margie. Like I said, my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white cisgendered female, and I'm a settler on this land. And to tell you about KW Habilitation, we're a nonprofit organization. Our head office is in Kitchener, but we provide services and supports for children with any special need all across Waterloo region, as well as to youth and adults with developmental disabilities in Kitchener-Waterloo. At KW Hab, our work is really focused on creating community, strengthening people, and aligning our services with our shared community values.
Great, thank you so much. Can you give us a sense of like how big is KW Habilitation?
Oh, of course. So we have about 500 employees on staff, and we have programs that work with all sorts of people. So we have affordable housing project. We do fee-for-service programs for people with developmental disabilities. We offer inclusive living supports for people with developmental disabilities. Our early learning program supports over 1,200 families across the region. And yeah, we just keep growing.
That's great. Thanks so much. Samantha, can you tell us what you went to school for and where you went to school?
Perfect. So I'll do the same as Margie and I'll just quickly situate myself. So my name is Sam. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white cisgendered settler on this land. Starting off with school, I took a little bit of an unconventional route. After high school, I took a couple years off because I just wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. As most young adults, teenagers after high school. I actually first started off at Conestoga College in a semester of radio broadcasting, which I absolutely adored, but I just found getting into the second semester, it wasn't quite the best fit for me, and it wasn't quite the direction I wanted to go in. So after that, I kind of went through this weird period where I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I was actually referred to the PR diploma from a really good friend of mine from high school who had successfully went through it. She told me a little bit about it, kind of what I guess sort of the outcomes would be, and it seemed like it could be a really good fit. I mean, I love communicating. That's kind of my thing. I love meeting new people and being creative in different ways. And there were just so many different avenues that I thought I could go down in PR. I mean, I didn't really have to decide what I wanted to do with my life just then, which was really good for me at the time.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I finished my PR diploma, I believe, in 2018. From there, I bridged into the PR degree program at Conestoga as well. I loved my experience in the diploma. It was fantastic, but I just wanted to challenge myself a little bit more and push myself to do more. I wanted to open some doors in my future, and I also wanted to explore some more opportunities. I think PR is so robust and there's so many different options and paths to go down. I really like having that flexibility even in the future. I successfully graduated the program with distinction in September of this year, so that's super exciting.
Okay, great. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And maybe for people that aren't super familiar with PR, can you maybe talk about, like I've talked to people before that aren't quite sure what the difference between PR and maybe marketing is. So can maybe talk a little bit about that?
That's a great question, and honestly, sometimes I still have trouble answering it. There are so many places that PR and marketing overlap. I mean, PR is public relations, right? So in terms of marketing, you know, you're marketing something. With PR, we do a lot more strategic communications, building sort of relationships on that person-to-person level, and that's kind of how we will do things like build brand reputations, get messages out to people, that sort of thing. So it's a lot more tactical communication than marketing would be, I'd say. But then again, we wear so many different hats as PR professionals that we often tend to get grouped in with different departments.
Okay.
But it's very broad, lots of things we do, but basically we just creatively communicate, and it's really interesting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So can you tell me why, Samantha, you decided to participate in work integrating, the work integrated learning that you did?
Yeah, so coming from all of my different educational backgrounds, I saw Will as sort of an experience in a way of bridging that gap between my academics and sort of the real world work. I definitely had the knowledge that I needed to succeed, but I just needed some actual experience to strengthen those skills. And most importantly to me was developing my own self-confidence as a young professional. For me, it was really about taking those next steps and sort of getting out of my comfort zone. Even to this day, and back then, I suffer from imposter syndrome, always. I feel it all the time. And with work integrated learning, you're working alongside professionals who do treat you like an equal, but are also there to support your learning journeys. So it's a great way to be able to ask questions, learn more while doing work in my field. I've worked alongside folks who I now realize were some of the most valuable mentors I could have had. Without work integrated learning, I don't think I would have had the success I had finding a job post-grad. These experiences definitely made me feel ready to jump into the workforce as soon as I completed my academics. By the time I was completely finished my whole academic journey, I had about 2 years of experience working in industry, and I think that experience was completely invaluable.
Great, thank you. And for maybe people attending this webinar that haven't heard the term work integrated learning before, or will, as you may hear us refer to it, basically it's a term that's used to describe things like co-op and field placements and capstones. It's basically opportunities that students have to incorporate what they're learning academically into a workplace setting or with an industry partner. So it's an opportunity that's built into the curriculum. So as opposed to the difference might be, you know, a summer job. It's different than a summer job because it's actually built into the curriculum. The students are applying what they're learning academically into this workplace setting, and there's an evaluation that's part of it as well. And so that's what we mean when we talk about work integrated learning. So Samantha, we talked about the fact that we talked a little bit, or I mentioned the fact that you did your co-op at KW Habilitation, and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. But can you tell us about the other work integrated learning experiences that you had while you were in school?
Yeah, so I've had quite a few. So I'll just kind of start from the beginning.
Sure.
So in my diploma, I completed a placement with a local marketing agency. And at the time, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go in for my career was traditional marketing, PR, that sort of thing. And it was great. I learned a lot about agency work, which was really invaluable, and I was introduced to a lot of aspects of the industry that aren't quite taught in school.
Mhm.
I still use a lot of the skills that I learned there today. But after I completed the placement, I actually received a LinkedIn message from an individual who had heard about me from one of my supervisors at that agency. The individual's name was Paul, and he is the co-owner of Lalonde Muller. That was a local digital marketing agency. He was interested in hiring a student to basically run their social media, be sort of the social media coordinator. This professional relationship grew, and eventually the two of us sort of ended up working side by side on numerous projects for about 2 years. Paul was a phenomenal mentor to me. He took me alongside on business meetings, included me in client projects. I don't quite think he realized, but these experiences were so incredibly valuable to me. Like, as a 20-something-year-old student, something as simple as like an onboarding meeting is so intimidating, especially if you've never done it before, right?
Mhm.
So looking back on this now, this sort of helped to shape my interpersonal skills in a really practical, hands-on, try-it-yourself way. And as I've said before, it really helped me develop that confidence that I needed to excel. Eventually, my role at Lalonde Muller sort of shifted to a bit more of a freelance copywriter type of situation where I was being pulled in on different client projects and supporting in different ways rather than just social media. And from there, I started exploring freelancing as an option to earn some income while I was still in school. And I began to freelance using copywriting to a bunch of businesses throughout Ontario. Professional writing is definitely different than academic writing, and these freelance jobs sort of helped me understand that and find ways to sort of own my skills. It worked really well because I was learning and fine tuning those skills, and my clients were also getting a really discounted rate for the services that they were getting. It was really that final stepping stone I needed to cross in order to view myself as sort of a young and a capable professional. Um, Sort of near the end of my freelancing journey, because I don't do that anymore as I have a full-time job and just balancing things gets a little bit crazy. But one of my clients near the end of my journey there, before I finished school, was a nonprofit in Ontario, very similar to sort of the developmental services, that sort of thing that we do at KW Hab. And the work that I completed with them sort of made me realize that I wanted to shift my work from traditional marketing over to nonprofit communications. And then in April of 2021, I applied for the co-op position with KW Hab, and I worked with them throughout the summer doing a bunch of stuff as a co-op student. And then when the full-time opportunity popped up, I jumped to apply to it so quickly. And it turns out they liked me because I'm now lucky enough to work alongside Margie and the rest of the organization. And I feel like we really make a good impact on our community, and it's been fantastic since.
That's great. Thank you so much. And we are going to dive a little bit deeper into what you did in the co-op, et cetera. A couple of things struck me when you were talking is we talk a lot about when businesses and students connect, there's certainly benefit to the business. The benefit to the students is they get the skills and experience that they need in order to be more prepared. But they also get to develop these really amazing connections and start building their network. And so through your placement and through your network, you got introduced to Paul. And through my role at the chamber, I had met Paul. And then you started working for Paul, and Paul introduced you and I. That's how we met. And then you actually came to a chamber networking event. So you got another opportunity to network with the business community. And it sounds like you learned through all of those experiences what you liked, what you maybe didn't want to do. You got to build your network. Like it sounds like a lot of benefit.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, yeah, I learned so much, and thinking back on it now, it feels sort of like I was in the right place at the right time, but realistically, it was just networking, right? That's kind of the
Right.
reality of networking, is that you meet other folks, you sort of connect, and I mean, if you're really passionate about what you do, that passion shows through your work, right? So word of mouth comes into play, and then also as a student, you had to keep up those relationships, and that can be a little bit difficult when you are in school full time. But I was doing things like sending little messages to sort of keep up with people. I sent Christmas cards to past clients. I still do
Mhm.
that, just to keep that relationship up. And it's just something that shows that you care about them, you value the relationship. And I think that's also really important to do when you're networking.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Margie, can you tell us why KW Habilitation decided to work with post-secondary students?
So I actually had to ask a few people around the office this question because I'm certainly not the first person to have done that, and I couldn't get a straight answer. It's so ingrained in our culture here that, it's just something that we do. I can definitely tell you that it fits within the values that we have at KW Habilitation. So we really think about how we are working to build a community where everyone belongs and participates. And that just doesn't just include the people we support. It includes students, it includes our community. And if we can offer these opportunities to students, then we're definitely going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that one of my colleagues mentioned was that, a lot of students who end up working with us don't have experience working with people with developmental disabilities. And so much of the work that we do is about inclusion and enriching the lives of people around us. When we have opportunities for students and other community members to learn more about people with developmental disabilities, we're definitely going to jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the areas that students work at, or what are some of the roles that students do when they're working with KW Habilitation?
So we've supported students from a variety of post-secondary institutions. And when, you were talking earlier about work integrated learning, I can think off the top of my head, co-ops, student placements, and even capstone projects all across the board. We've been lucky to work with students in those ways. They've worked with our admin team. We've had student placements in our early learning, childcare, and family resources program with inclusive living, our fee for service options. And we even have a farm where we grow food, and we've hired student farmers and interns every year during the harvest season. So
Wow.
It's all across the board for sure.
Wow, that's great. And it sounds like it is hiring students and working with students is truly ingrained in the culture, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. And I know for me personally, like I was interested in building my supervisory skills, and I'm the only person on the communications team at KW Hab. So I wouldn't have had that opportunity unless we looked externally, like for students.
Right, right. And that's a really interesting point, because we talk about how students can bring innovative ideas and creative ideas, and they can be a great source of temporary talent for businesses. But another really great benefit to businesses is if you have a small business, maybe you've got staff that are looking for professional development. You as a business might have a tight budget in terms of training. Working with students, you can give your staff the opportunity to supervise and mentor students. It develops their leadership skills and their mentorship skills. It's a really great professional development opportunity that helps them grow. It also may help the business retain those staff because they're getting those experiences to grow. So that's really great to hear. Can you talk about the work or the projects that you hired Sam to help you with?
Sure, I'd love to. In general, like the way I approached student co-op opportunities is to have an idea about the projects that I need support with, but also working directly with the student to develop a work plan that fits within their own learning goals. And I think that, even though the first day is kind of everything's all up in the air, what it meant for me and with the students I've worked with is that the student is even more engaged in the work and they're really excited to contribute. So that's been a really positive way for me to approach it. Sam's work, she was interested in writing, her writing skills, sort of to shake off some of the academic writing that she was talking about earlier. So really quickly, we were able to give Sam the responsibility of writing and building out our weekly internal newsletters. So that's the main way we communicate with all of our staff, and we send updates every single week. So Sam has been instrumental in bringing that content out for us, and she's continued to do that in her as she's started working with us as well. She had the opportunity, I think, to focus on some of the strategic documents that we have that, you know, when you're just a one-person department, you don't always get those updated in a timely way. So that was a huge benefit for me, especially. I was so glad she was interested in working with that stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And another really great point, when we've talked to businesses who haven't hired a student before or haven't worked with a student before, and we talk to them about the reasons why they haven't, one of the reasons that comes up is they don't know what work to give a student. And so we often will talk to them about, you know, what are those back burner projects that would absolutely have an impact and add value to your business, but you're just not getting to because there's too many other things to get to, especially if you're a one-person business or a one-person department. And so, you know, giving students those projects that you don't have the opportunity to get to, or perhaps you don't have the expertise to do, can really add value to your business. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, and even though I mentioned, you know, sort of that we keep it really loose at the start, I've obviously got my list of like secret things I really need help with, and that I'm excited to have someone work with me on. And usually, like, you know, if you go through a good hiring process, you're going to find somebody that's going to fit well on your team. And Sam was, you know, a great addition for that.
That's great. So Sam, we've heard from Margie's perspective what your role is. Can you tell us what your role is and what some of the tasks were that you did?
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be some overlap between what we said, but I'll just kind of speak to it more so from the way that I saw it. So I did a lot in my co-op role. I definitely had my hands on more things than I expected. When students first hear of a co-op, you know, many times I've heard of horror stories where some folks maybe are just like running to get coffee, right? But that was most definitely not the case with me. Like, this was so valuable. Margie was a phenomenal mentor throughout the time I was there. Her first question is, what would you want to learn? Like, what do you want to work on? Which I thought was absolutely amazing. I was totally astounded that that was sort of her first priority. So that was really, really great for my learning experiences. Like Margie spoke to a little bit before, I worked on our weekly internal newsletters, which was phenomenal. This taught me how to sort of use industry specific and plain non-academic language to communicate with a diverse group of people. Like I said, and I've spoke to multiple times before, academic writing is not the same as plain language or professional writing, academic writing, sorry. So it was a bit of a learning curve to start off with. There were definitely some things that we kind of had to go over, and Margie taught me all of that, and it was so invaluable. I eventually figured it out, which is great, and I'm still doing it today.
Good.
And we sort of created a robust and comprehensive media list too, which was really, really fun. Like, this thing was super robust, and it took me so much time, but it was really, really neat, and it taught me how to source important contact information, and use sort of social media as a tool to further make connections and reach out to folks and say, hey, would you be interested in this? Or sort of go through Twitter. Like, Twitter list was one of my biggest things, was to find different reporters, different contacts from different areas. And that was something I didn't even really know would be such a big tool that I'd use, but that was something new that I learned. And then I also had my hands on some really neat internal strategy documents. So again, those sort of things that get tossed to the back burner, especially, you know, Margie was sort of a one woman team, and she was so busy that some of these things do get pushed to the back of the list, right? So these documents basically planned for KW Hab's future as a forward-thinking nonprofit. All of these little components to sort of move past, we are now in our 50th year in service to KW. So how are we going to push past that 50th year? How are we going to find new creative ways to do things and reach more people and help more people? So it was really cool to be able able to contribute to these and brainstorm ways that we could improve our current processes and help more people in the community. So a bunch of things, but it was really, really cool to be able to get my hands in things that were actually really important and meaningful to KW Hub. I definitely did not expect that. A lot of times, students, they're so capable of getting things done, and they're so capable of finding new and creative ways. Like, we do have experiences coming up that we could possibly be working with students in the future, and I'm already excited. I know I'm just like a recent grad, but I'm so excited to see what these people could possibly come up with, because they're so excited to learn, and there's so many new things always happening in the industry. So they're going to have new tools that I might even not know exist. So it's really neat, and I'm really excited for it.
Right. That's great. And so we know that another benefit, I used to be a recruiter, so if I put my recruitment hat on, a good part of any talent strategy is for businesses to connect with students to start filling that talent pipeline. And so we kind of said it at the beginning, but Sam is now working with KW Habilitation full time, which is amazing. Can you tell us about what your full-time role is, Sam?
Yeah, so I am the Communications and Fund Development Coordinator at KW Hub. I absolutely adore my job. It's fantastic. My full-time role definitely builds on some of the tasks that I did as a co-op student. I still coordinate, like Margie said, those weekly internal newsletters. We work in partnership on that. We pull in different folks from different departments. It's really, really neat. I'm also currently using some of those strategic documents that we developed to find new and sort of modern age fund development strategies, which is really neat. I'm even using some of my radio diploma skills to do things like audio editing and video editing. So that by no means was a waste. These are things I wouldn't have known if I didn't do that, right? Both of us wear a ton of hats, and some weeks can definitely be really busy and feel a little bit overwhelming, but we have a great supportive team behind us who works very, very seamlessly to get things done. This is really kind of the beginning of my role. I am still quite new to this position at KW Hub, but we are in the process of planning out new strategic directions for our donors and sponsors, and it's been really cool to sort of help build it from the ground up. I'm super thankful to be a part of the organization. We do such great work in the community, but then also we feel so valued as employees. So it's really great to be able to sort of build on those things that I learned as a co-op in a full-time position. So
that's great. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the transition was like from student to full-time employee?
I'm not sure if this is the case anywhere else, but it was quite seamless. It was incredibly seamless. Basically, it was just sort of picking up where I left off for the communication side of things. But then Margie and I sort of sat down and had some planning meetings around, fund development. This is new for you. This is new for me. How are we going to go about this? So we looked at possible professional development opportunities, which KW Habilitation is always super supportive of. And that was really neat. We sort of sat down and we thought, what are some cool things we can do? So we basically made like a huge work plan for different quarters and brainstormed some neat things to do. And that's sort of becoming underway now. Like, we had our goals for November and those are already being hit, if not done. And then come December, we're sort of doing a little bit more planning, and sort of our plan for January is to hit the ground running with new strategies. So it's been seamless, but we've also built on a lot of things that I did during my co-op. So it's really neat to see those plans sort of flesh through and come into reality, right? So it's really neat.
That's great. Thank you. Margie, I'm wondering if you can talk about the value that KW Habilitation has gotten from working with students, and even comment on the benefit of the organization of hiring somebody full-time when they've already done a co-op with you.
So I polled a few other people in the office about this question as well, because I'm not the only one who's worked with students, and it was great to hear some of their answers. So I wrote them down.
Great.
one of the things that was mentioned was how students bring useful information as well as resources to our teams that we can use moving forward. So because we work with students from a variety of programs, they have insight and they're able to sort of bring that back to our multidisciplinary teams to provide the best services that we can to the people we support. We're really grateful that projects that we don't always get to commit to fully, students can take on, and I've already mentioned that. And then what's so great is that a lot of times the energy that students bring to our agency really rubs off on the rest of our staff. It's really fun to see things from new perspectives and from people who are just about ready to enter the workforce. And then also, like, my main reason was to be able to develop new supervision skills. And that's certainly been a benefit to other people in our agency. Even like when we think about succession planning, having these opportunities, for our staff who are looking for additional PD to be able to move forward into our agency, this is a really great opportunity. So Sam isn't the only student that we've hired after they did a co-op placement or another student placement with us. I know specifically that we've hired people in our early learning department after they completed their placements, and I'm sure this has happened in other areas of the agency. I think what's great, Sam sort of mentioned how it was a really seamless onboarding. It's so much faster. It's a less robust requirement because they've already started with the orientation within the agency, and it saves us so much time and resources. And then basically Sam was able to start right away, she had been working all summer on our weekly newsletter, and I was actually off the first week that she started, and I just sent her an email and I said, okay, let's just keep going, just do this, and then we'll get through the first week, and then after that, when I'm back, we can really dig into some of the strategies that we're wanting to work on together.
That's great.
Yeah.
So Sam, did you do your co-op in the summer and then you graduated? So did you go back to school after your co-op or no?
Yeah, so the way that things sort of shifted, just because I was what they call a bridger, again, a little bit of a weird sort of journey when it came to school. But I finished all of my academics. I believe it finished in like April of 2021. But I was still due for one more co-op term before I was technically eligible to graduate. So I started that co-op term with KW Habilitation in May, I believe, and that kind of went up to September, and then there was a little bit of gap between September, October, and I started in October. So
it really was seamless for you.
Yeah,
It
really was. Like it was so funny. I had like a month off, so I spent the whole month relaxing before I kind of dove into my new job, and it was great. It was great. It didn't feel like any time had passed.
That's great. And like you said, that is a bit of a different situation. Not all students experience that. Some will have a co-op and go back to school, have a field placement and go back to school, do a capstone while they're in school. And so if an organization is not in the situation where they have a co-op student that's done immediately after that, then I think it's really important for both the organization and the student to keep in touch with each other while the student is back at school.
I agree 100% with you. And that again comes back to sort of like networking and maintaining relationships. And I think that falls on both students and organizations and businesses, right? I mean, if you've really had a great connection with a student that you've hired, you want to keep that relationship going because they could possibly be a really good asset down the road. So
absolutely. It's all about building of the talent pipeline, right? So once you work with a student that is really great, has got potential, then you want to keep in contact with them. And then down the road, when you have a suitable opportunity, you can go to those students that are in your pipeline and your recruitment costs will be down and your training costs will be down because they already have an understanding about your organization. So I think that's really great.
I agree.
Yeah.
When we posted the position, like I personally worked with a couple of different students and I shared that with both of them. And the other student that I've worked with stayed on at KW Habilitation in a volunteer capacity. So it really is something that we've been really lucky to foster these relationships with young people in the community.
That's great. Sam, can you share the value of participating in WIL in terms of how it's prepared you for your career? I know you've talked about it kind of a little bit, but do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I can definitely reinforce a couple areas. Truly for me, and I know every student is different, but for me, one of the most valuable skills I learned during my time with work integrated learning was confidence.
Mm,
So confidence in myself and confidence in my work, that was something I've always struggled with. But having those sort of having to put myself in those sort of I don't want to say uncomfortable because they weren't quite uncomfortable, but unfamiliar positions definitely helped to reinforce my confidence and helped me learn things that you can't learn from a textbook, that you can't
mhm,
learn in class exercises, right? So that was super valuable. As well as I had already known how to do a lot of the tasks someone in PR should know how to do. Um, but I needed to learn how to fully execute and flesh them out from the ground up. So that was
mhm,
really interesting, and I learned a lot of that again in my co-op, moving to my full-time position here.
mhm,
I also learned I gained, sorry,
mhm,
years of experience that were incredibly invaluable. It helped me fill out my resume, number one, which
mhm,
is super important when you're a new grad.
mhm.
And I had industry relevant experiences right out of school.
Right.
It quite honestly, in my position, it sets me apart from the crowd of folks that quite don't have that yet. Um, I think if I was thrown into the real world without having will opportunities, I don't think I would have succeeded as well as I did, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
I'm incredibly thankful for all of my experiences so far, and I hope that one day in my career, I'll be able to sort of flip the coin and be able to mentor and build up students in the future, because I think it's so important, and my experiences definitely spoke to that. So.
Yeah, that is so great. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, many years ago, I also did co-op, and I still think back on that experience. And I even did a co-op in high school, and I developed skills. I learned what I didn't want to do, which I think is really important. And so those work integrated learning opportunities can really shape you. So, Sam, as you mentioned, you developed an amazing network out of that, and you've done really great work to maintain that network, which is really great. Um, Margie, what advice would you give to other small businesses or not-for-profit organizations or other businesses in general who are interested in working with students?
Do it. Don't hesitate to take the leap. I
Mm-hmm.
think that it's so important for you to be able to build out co-op and student opportunities into your business plan. And what's kind of great is that the commitment's usually short term.
Mm-hmm.
So it does feel like a little bit less of a risk. And for us on the nonprofit side, I feel like it's probably the same in the business field. There's often grants that are available that can help cover costs of your student. And for me, it's just a really great opportunity for me to learn more, to be a supervisor. And there's so much that youth and students have to teach you. It's really exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. You're absolutely right. There are grants. So I think when a lot of people who haven't worked with students before think about working with students, they automatically know about co-op, which is a wonderful opportunity. And we've talked about co-op today. What they may not know is that there are subsidies that are available, and those can be really great. Like right now, the federal government has a program, the student wage placement program, where they will cover 75% of a student's wages per semester up to $7,500, which is huge, and makes hiring a co-op student really accessible to a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses. And then some of those other opportunities like capstone projects, there's no cost with that. And the time commitment can be quite less. And a field placement, there's generally no cost to field placements depending on the program. And again, it's less of a time commitment as well. And so I think it's important for businesses to really explore. If they're interested in just learning more, it's all about exploring at this point. Having a conversation doesn't mean that they're signing up for it, but it's important to learn more about that. And it's funny, Margie, that you say do it. I was talking with another business a couple months ago, and I asked her the same question. She was a really small business. I think they have probably about 10 staff. And her answer to that question was exactly like yours. She said, do it. And so I think it's important that people understand that it is an option for larger organizations. It's also an option for smaller organizations. And at the end of the day, it benefits the student and it benefits the business, which is really important. Is there anything that either of you would like to add that we didn't cover before we get into Q&A?
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
great.
good to answer any questions anyone may have.
Okay. Let's see what we have here. So this might be for Margie, but either is welcome to answer. When looking to hire or work with a student, how do I make sure that the student I hire shares in my organizational goals and values?
I would just say that completely has to do with your recruitment process and the way you choose interviewing students. We've had, I've been lucky to be present and to interview all the students that I've had the pleasure of working with. And, the difference between, interview skills, like that's something that I think is a really important way to navigate whether or not the person is going to fit in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's kind of, because it is a short-term commitment, it's not the worst thing if it doesn't work out. So
that's good. Okay. Another question came in. Probably is more of a me answering question, but feel free to jump in if you'd like. As a small business that's new to the concept of work integrated learning, what resources are available to help me in learning more? So I'll just say that if you visit the Access Student Talent page on the Chamber site, we've got some resources there. And we are absolutely open to having a conversation and answering any questions that you have. And then we can point you to the specific resources that you need. And then the second question was, how soon should I reach out to the Access Student Talent program when interested in working with the students? So this is a really great question that sometimes we get small businesses who haven't worked with students before, and they'll come to us and say, I'd really like to work with a student next month. And sometimes that's possible depending on how they would like to work with students, but often the post-secondary schools recruit industry partners about a semester in advance. And so I would always suggest that it's better to start the conversations much sooner than later. So even if you're thinking, probably not till spring or fall next year, start having a conversation now so that you can understand what options are out there. You can plan, you can hit all the timelines that are there, and you're not missing any timelines. Margie, are you still hiring co-op students? I'm assuming KW Habilitation is still hiring co-op students. Are you hiring co-op students for your team, or do you have any insight into the cycle that they use?
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that we'll do that again this year. In general, the last few years we've done it in the summer, the May, June, July, August placements. So for that, we start right in January. It's on my work plan to sort of bring that up with our senior leadership team to sort of get approvals to move that forward. And we get that going, we have that going so that we're always ready for the deadlines, because there's deadlines for posting the job postings. And if you're working with a post-secondary institution, like they've got their own ways of handling it. So,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'll just remind anybody who, if you've got a question, please feel free to put in the Q&A. But to your point, Margie, you're right. Like the different post-secondary schools will have different timelines, and the different work integrated learning options will have different timelines. So, so that's why it's always better to start reaching out sooner rather than later. I know that the placement that Sam did for PR, they hold them every, I think it's the winter semester. I could be wrong on that.
I believe so. Honestly, it was a little while ago. So.
Yeah. And so I know that they're recruiting industry partners now. So it's always good to have to reach out as soon as possible. Let's see. So I have somebody who works with you both that just wants to reinforce the just do it on working with a student. And and he encourages people to take the leap of faith in hiring students, and there's incredible benefits. And they've returned to KW Habilitation tenfold. It's been a joy to work with students. So thank you so much for hiring students and working with students. And I really hope that some other organizations will consider it. It doesn't look like we have any other questions in the chat. It was so lovely speaking with both of you. Thank you so much. I'll give you one last opportunity if there's anything. Other than that, I think we can wrap up our conversation.
I think you mentioned, there was the question about when to reach out to access student talent.
Yes,
like,
please.
who to ask for support. Like,
Yeah.
KW Habilitation, like, we're a member of the chamber. So, if there were other members who had questions about accessing student talent and about, the benefits to hiring students, like, we as members would be happy to talk to other members to do that. And I'm sure that there would be other organizations that are chamber members that would be willing to do the same thing.
That's a great resource. Thank you. Because we're happy, obviously, to provide answers and information. And sometimes organizations want to hear from other organizations. So that's a very generous offer. Thank you. Like I said, I really appreciate both of you coming on. I think we have really highlighted the benefits to the organization in the expertise that the students can bring and the creative ideas and innovative ideas, a temporary or a part-time source of talent, but also a really great opportunity for businesses to start building their talent pipeline, which is so important, especially at a time when talent attraction and retention is really difficult for businesses and organizations. So really connecting with students as early as you can is important, and it will help you down the road. From a student standpoint, it's been so wonderful to hear the benefits that you've experienced, Samantha. So, the skills and experience that you've developed. I think what I heard was all of those experiences have helped you kind of determine where you wanted your path to go and maybe where you didn't want it to go. You've been able to develop a great network, and you've leveraged that network to get other opportunities, which is so wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I will always advocate for both sides of this, for students to sort of take the leap into exploring different employment opportunities in their field while studying, but then also for businesses hiring students. I mean, the work students come up with is it's invaluable. They come up with the most enthusiastic ideas and things that perhaps someone who's been in the industry for a little while may not think of, right? Everything's so outside of the box, everything's fresh, they're very excited, and that enthusiasm definitely shows through in the work they do. So I will always advocate for this, and from a student perspective, it was fantastic. It was incredible.
And I've had the opportunity in the Access Student Talent Program to hire co-op students over the years, and I can tell you that they brought expertise that I didn't have. Social media is not really my wheelhouse. They've introduced me to databases that I hadn't worked with before. I had one co-op student who was very familiar with a webinar platform and how to kind of do all the behind the scenes when I wasn't. Like, it was invaluable, the level of information and knowledge that they brought for me, and really because it was only because of them that we were able to grow the Access Student Talent Program. So it's been huge for us. And I think at the end of the day, when we give students the opportunity to get the skills and experience that employers are looking for, then upon graduation, the collective talent pool is a more qualified talent pool. So then the gap between what the students can bring and what the employers need is smaller. Students can hit the ground running, they can really make an impact quickly. And so I think it's really a win-win all around for everybody.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for joining us today. That brings us to the end of today's session. I want to thank again our sponsors. Our title sponsor of the series is Manulife. Our platinum sponsor of the series is the Immigration Partnership. And November sponsor is Waterloo EDC. And of course, today's speakers, Margie and Sam. And finally, to all of you, thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, we host a new Business Success Series session every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Next week, we'll be joined by Stacey Mitchell of KW Career Compass and Tim Frey of Links to Work to learn how hiring and retaining people with disabilities can improve business outcomes and increase innovation and profit. We will discuss the business case for hiring people with disabilities, inclusive policies and frameworks that can bolster retention for existing employees, and methods and community supports to tap into this underrepresented section of the labor market. In a climate of labor shortages, you won't want to miss this informative discussion that will help you to maintain a competitive advantage in your recruitment and retention efforts. We hope to see you then. For full details and to register, please visit kwgreaterchamber.com. Please share this series with your friends and colleagues. Join us every Wednesday afternoon for the next edition of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Business Success Series, brought to you by Manulife, the Immigration Partnership, and November sponsor Waterloo EDC. Because if it's Wednesday, it's Business Success Series. Thanks again to Margie and Sam for joining us, and thanks to all of you.